Big celebrations in Eritrea as the country marks 25 years of independence. The territory was colonized by Italy in 1890, but handed to Ethiopia after the Second World War. Now, that preceded a 30-year-long war of independence where Eritrea stood virtually alone. Mary Harper is in the capital, Asmara.
I'm in Eritrea's main boulevard. It's lit up with bright lights on every palm tree strung across the street, every building. And the street, this wide street, is thronging with people. They've closed the roads. There are children waving Eritrean flags, having flashing lights on their heads. There's old people, old ladies in white robes. There's a family coming now. Everyone dressed in their absolute best clothes, 2 children holding balloons. There's 5 bandstands here with, you can probably hear a mixture of the music. There are bands from China, Uganda, of course, Eritrea, Sudan, Germany. Ironically, although Eritrea is often in the news because so many people are reported to be fleeing, thousands of Eritreans from the diaspora have come home to join the party.
We are Eritreans from Saudi Arabia, Riyadh. Yeah.
Born and raised in
Riyadh, yes.
Yeah.
And what does it mean to you that Eritrea is 25 years old now?
I can't describe my happiness. I just can't describe. I just saw so many histories about Eritrea. It really hurts us. But when you see 25th anniversary today, it's amazing. I can't believe we Eritreans worked hard and we got our Independence Day, and this is an amazing anniversary. It's the best day of Eritrean people for Eritrea.
Some people might find it strange, some people listening to this, because what they know about Eritrea is that young people like yourselves, they run away to go and live in places like Saudi Arabia or Europe. You two are 2 young ladies who have decided to come back here.
Because some people have their own circumstances, but still the thing they're doing, it's wrong. Running away from your country instead of developing it, it's different. So when we come, I swear I feel like I found my freedom over here. I know I'm in Saudi Arabia. As you can know, Saudi Arabia, there is no freedom and everything is so weird there. But when I come here, I feel like something that I cannot describe.
A feeling she can't describe, and a lot more freedom than in Saudi Arabia. Now, that's a very different picture of Eritrea than the one we're used to hearing, isn't it? The European Union, for example, says more people flee Eritrea than from any other country in Africa. So let's hear from Mary Harper again. She says in Eritrea, things are so different from other places she's visited.
It really is most peculiar because, in general, all we ever hear about Eritrea in the media from human rights organisations and think tanks is that everybody's leaving the country, that the country's virtually empty. And yet there are thousands of people from the diaspora here. A big party started in Doha airport while I was waiting for the plane. Eritreans wrapped in flags on the plane were singing, dancing on the plane. So it's almost like the opposite of what you usually see, read and hear about Eritrea. But at the same time, it cannot be denied that people are leaving this country, that life is tough for many.
You have been to Eritrea before. This is your second visit anyway. So, when you say things are so different, some things are so different from any other countries, explain that a bit.
It is not a democracy in Eritrea. There's no parliament. They've only ever had one president. There's no free press, but members of government, they're very, very accessible. They drive around in broken cars. There aren't that many cars on the streets of Eritrea. It's an African capital like no other. There's very little hustle and bustle. It's an Italian town built really in the 1930s, and in some ways it feels it hasn't moved on since then. There is a very strong sense of people should be equal. You don't see this extreme poverty. The gap between rich and poor, I suppose, is not really in much evidence in Eritrea. Eritrea does quite firmly believe that it should do things on its own, in its own way, and it's proud of that. It is a modest country. I suppose things like modesty, hard work, the kind of spirit, I suppose, that was developed during the 30-year war against this mighty enemy, Ethiopia, is still really present here in Eritrea.
So, Mary, what then do you think is the source of all this trouble, or what is the, where do we pin it all down to? Because you have what seems to be a design for an equitable society, you have a pride and patriotism, you have self-resilience, a lot of that, and yet at the same time it's become a country where most of the migrants fleeing Africa are coming from Eritrea. Where has it all gone wrong?
I think that it is quite an opaque place. Probably the reality lies somewhere in the middle. And certainly many, many people outside the country are highly critical of what goes on in Eritrea. And also all young people, they spend their final year of school in a big camp far away, and after that they have to do some military training. Every single person in this country has to do some form of national service, and sometimes that goes on for many, many years, and they have no choice as to what role they might be playing. Some go into the military, some are teachers, some do work as civil servants, all sorts of roles, which means you don't really have unemployment because everybody has a role, but people don't have choice in that, and they're poorly paid. I think it's that sort of lack of choice and lack of real economic opportunity that drives people away more than fear.
The BBC's Mary Harper in Asmara.